properly served and posted, I would entertain a motion to dispense with the formal reading of the warrant, which was posted on March 22. Motion is moved. Waive, seconded. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Unanimous vote. We waive the reading of the warrant. I have nominated Peter Totten again to serve. I think he's up in a large number of years serving as deputy moderator, assistant moderator, and I'd ask the meeting to ratify my nomination of Peter as the assistant moderator. We have a motion. I have a second. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. It's a unanimous vote. Peter is assistant moderator. The assistant moderator and tellers have already been sworn in by the town clerk. The tellers are Ann Green, Richard Harding, Ellen Kelly, Irene Murray, Carolyn Soames, Kathy McGowan, Chris Marachi, Kylie Storm Cooley, Penny Scott Pipes, and Allison Short. At this time, I'm going to ask Jamie Gilmore, chair of the advisory committee, to introduce his board.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening, fellow legislators. Your advisory committee meets basically weekly throughout the year to consider all aspects of motions and budgets brought by the town and by the citizenry. We do this of our own time. Some of us do have lives. Let's do it there. But I want to just extend my to all the work that they do. You have this book in front of you. It is a labor of love. It's very informative. You can find lots of information there, and it's obviously up to you to make up your own minds. Tonight we have Elise Russo, our vice chair, Jerry Kelly, our former chair emeritus. We have Patrice Metro. We have Dan McWigan, Linda Ferguson, Missy Seidel, Mark DiCosimo,
Connor Doherty. Mark and Connor are our newest members joining the committee this year. So I just want to say thank you for all your time.
Thank you, Mr. Gilmore. Next, I would ask Chair of the Select Board, Mr. Vignani, to introduce his board and the Town Administrator, Town Council.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm happy to introduce our board. First, I'm going to start on the far right with Town Council, which is Kevin Freitag. He's new here. Welcome. Next to him is Karen Canfield, followed by our treasurer, Maura Curran, Karen Conley, Vice Chair Andrew Goodrich, Town Administrator Jim Boudreau, and Financial Director Nancy Holt.
Thank you. I would next ask Nicole Brandolini, Chair of the School Committee, to introduce her committee and the Superintendent of Schools.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. It is my pleasure to introduce the members of the Scituate School Committee, Dr. Carrie Burkowski, Janice Lindblom, Peter Gates, and we also have with us tonight Superintendent Bill Burkhead, Assistant Superintendent Heidi Driscoll, and Dr. Bob Dutch, Director of Business and Finance, and we thank them for putting together this extremely comprehensive budget booklet for us tonight. We appreciate all of your hard work for our children at Scituate Public Schools. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd ask Chris Carcier, the Chair of the Capital Planning Committee, to introduce his board.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. On the Capital Planning Committee, we have myself, Richard Taft is our clerk, Michael Gibson, Kurt Gunther, Peter Gates and Nicole Brandolini from the School Committee, Jim Boudreau, the Town Administrator, Andrew Goodrich, and sometimes Karen Canfield from the Select Board, Jamie from the Advisory Committee, and of course Nancy Holt, our Town Accountant and supplier of treats.
Thank you. And I'd ask Patricia Lambert to introduce the members of the planning board.
Good evening. I'm the chair of the planning board, Patricia Lambert. Joining me tonight is Bob McLean, Rebecca Lewis, town planner Karen Joseph. Missing tonight is Ann Burbine, Ben Bornstein, and Steve Pritchett. Come and see us every second and fourth Thursday in the Selectman's office. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, we have the Community Preservation Committee. Could Mr. Fennelly introduce his members? I know Mr. Fennelly. Oh, there he is.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Community Preservation Committee are all volunteers. I'm Dan Fennelly, the chair. Skylar Chick is the vice chair. Suzanne Brennan, Meg Stillman, Ann Burbine, Jill Caffrey, Mike Connor, Penny Scott Pipes, and Jack Whitaker are the members of the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, we'd like to take a moment to remember those who have passed, who have been served in various capacities in the town since we were last together in the fall. That would be George Sullivan from Scituate Schools, Harold Blanchett from the Water Department, Conley Ford from the Republican Town Committee, Board of Registrars, and as an election warden, Richard Eckhouse, Seawall Committee, Waterways Commission, Joseph Noble, Assistant Harbor Master and Shellfish Constable, Montel Newman, member of the Cable TV Advisory Committee, the Economic Development Committee, and the Widows Walk Golf Committee, and Geraldine A. Lind from the Assessor's Office. Take a moment and reflect on their service and to the town. Thank you. At this point, I'm going to turn to our select board, and I understand there's a presentation to be made.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening, everyone. As the second longest standing board member here this evening, I have the pleasure to take some time out this evening and commemorate our longest standing board member who is with us this evening, Mr. Tony Vignani, who this will be his last annual town meeting, and we want to give him an appropriate send-off. Tony has served the town for 21 years. He started on the advisory board in 2002, and quickly was enthralled with the love of public service and decided to run for the select board, better known back then as the Board of Selectmen. In 2008, Tony was elected to the board, and he has set the town on a very strident course since then. We are extremely grateful for his service, his financial acumen, his sound evaluation of all the projects that have come before us. And I can tell you that he always had the taxpayer first in mind every time he thought about any initiative that came before him. And before I go on to list a couple of the accomplishments that he was very actively involved in over the last 21 years, I'd like to also thank, before we forget, his family. Anne, Michael, Matthew, Olivia, and Sophia, who some of them are here in the back room, because it's not only the sacrifice of an individual like Tony, but also a family like his, a very close-knit family, of all the events that he missed to put town initiatives first. And I think they also deserve a round of applause at the end of the evening, too. So just a couple of the small things that Tony and his colleagues have been able to accomplish over the past 20 years. Starting with the Maritime Center and Cole Parkway rehabilitation. Jenkins School, public safety building complex, renovation of the library, renovation of the high school and Gates Middle Schools, the senior center, a beautiful athletic complex, just to name some of the big projects, and many, 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 sorry guys, I didn't mean to have my back to you, many, many, many other projects the last 21 years. He has had the pleasure to serve with 3 town administrators, 2 fire chiefs, 3 police chiefs, 5 superintendents, and 10 separate Board of Selectmen or Select Board members. I know he's a better man for it, serving next to all those folks, but we appreciate his leadership, and I personally appreciate his friendship. And that's who Tony is. He's a good man, and he will be sorely missed because he loves this town, and he certainly has given significant dedication to all of us. So thank you, Tony. If you'd like to come up, we have a few more accommodations for you that we'll go through. So I'd like to welcome some of our esteemed representatives from Senator Markey's office. We have Jim Cantwell, who you're all familiar with. We also have Representative Keating, and we also have a representative from Senator Patrick O'Connor's office, and Congressman Keating. I said Representative Carney, sorry, Patrick. And, Congressman Keating also has sent a citation. So Patrick, did you want to go first?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here and being a part of our local democracy. We wanted to just take a couple seconds and recognize Tony for all the work that he's put in to make this town a better place. As Mara said, joined here by representatives from Senator O'Connor's office, Congressman Keating's office, and Senator Markey's office. We wanted just to take a second. We have a citation from the House of Representatives, and it is to congratulate and thank Tony for his more than a decade of service to the town of Scituate. So the entire membership of the House of Representatives extends its best wishes and hope for future good fortune, and we are grateful for all of the work that you put in to make this town a better place. Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
How you doing? I'm Mike Murphy. I work for State Senator Pat O'Connor's office. He could not be here tonight.
I think you need to get closer to that mic. We can't hear you.
Oh, closer? All right, there we go. Move it up.
There you go.
Than Rep. Kearney. So we just have an official citation from the Senate to thank Tony for his more than 15 years of dedicated service on the Select Board in the town of Scituate, and for his outstanding commitment to public service. And be it further known that the Massachusetts Senate extends its best wishes for continued success, that this citation be duly signed by the President of the Senate and attested to, and a copy thereof transmitted by the Clerk of the Senate. And it's signed by the Senate President Karen Spilka, the Clerk of the Senate Michael Hurley, and Senator O'Connor on this day, April 10th. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. And Mr. Moderator, I know there's a lot of great business to be done tonight, but on behalf of Senator Ed Markey, I wanted to return to bring our congratulations. Tony, you and I came in together when I was first being elected as the state representative, and you were going after your 6 years on the advisory board, becoming a member of the select board. And I have to tell you, on each of the issues Mara went through, we had a new EOC, the Joe Norton Public Safety Building. That was done with a lot of work from you, Tony, and getting state funds to be done for there. The new middle school with the school building authority. You, with your background in finances, were helping us a tremendous amount there. The new library, making sure that there be funds that could come from the state to help there. The new senior center. It goes on and on and on. And as a testament, Tony, to just the amazing work that you do it with all levels of government, we just were here last week to celebrate a little over $3.4 million to come from the federal government now to help for the new water treatment facility. All these things, Tony, are things that you have led to make this town better. You've served at a time, the most difficult time to be in local government during the COVID era. And on a personal level, I just want to thank you and Ann, and I know that Michael, Olivia, Matthew, Sophia, for lending you for this service. Tony, if you could come forward for 1 second. By the way, Senator Ed Markey called tonight, and Tony didn't pick up, so he's got a message now. So you'll have a personal message you can keep, but it's a certificate of special congressional recognition presented to Tony Vignani in recognition of to your dedicated community and public service leading the town of Scituate for a total of 21 years, 15 years on the select board and 6 years on the advisory board. It's been a pleasure to know you as a friend, even more so to see all the work that you do for your family, and we're just so thrilled to be here today. Congratulations.
Thank you very much, Jim.
Thank you.
Well, I didn't expect this. Thank you all very much for all the recognition. I never did it for the recognition. I enjoyed doing it and really got a lot out of working for the town. I'd like to thank a few people. I would be remiss if I didn't mention a few people when I first started this that really were mentors to me and meant a lot to getting me on track in terms of how I do this. First one is Scott Roberts, who I served on the advisory committee with for 6 years. Really liked the way he handled himself and liked his opinions on town government. And then secondly would be Joe Norton, who I served on the board with and was friends with for many years, and just learned so much watching him negotiate and deal with public issues as well. A couple other thanks. The majority of the meeting here is town employees. I want to thank all of you. You make our job easy. You do all the hard work and don't get all the recognition that you need. Thank you for all the work you do, and thank you for being so dedicated to this town. Next, I'd like to thank all the select board members that I serve with. They've all been great. We haven't always agreed on every issue, but we've always been friends. We've always respected each other's opinion, and I was just counting it when Maura mentioned a while ago, there's only been 10 of them, 4 of them over here to my right, and they've just been a pleasure to work with, and really it's been a great working relationship. So thank you all for everything you've done over the years. And lastly, I need to thank, when you elect a select board person, you elect more than one. You elect a family, and you elect my wife. Was part of the role with me, and I want to thank her for her dedication, her commitment to this role also. She probably took more of the brunt in conversations and comments from my silly opinions during the years, but I wanted to thank her for her commitment to the position too, and I love you and thank you for everything you've done for the town also. And the last comment is I hope this is the longest part of the meeting this evening. Thank you all for coming, and let's get on with town business.
Thank you. Okay, moving to the meeting proper. My name is Jim Toomey. I'm the town moderator. My job is to chair the meeting and decide questions of order. I don't vote on articles. Let me just take a couple of minutes to talk about the procedure and how the meeting works. Town has 2 branches of government, the executive branch, which is represented here tonight by the Board of Selectmen and the school committee, and then there's a legislative branch, and you are the legislators for the town of Scituate. Each of you is a citizen legislator. The executive branch boards, whose members are guests here today, made requests asking for your approval. These requests take the form of the articles in the warrant. The purpose of the meeting is to allow you, citizen legislators, to review these executive branch requests. You're within your rights as citizen legislators to question the executive branch and then act upon their requests as you see fit. This is your meeting. You have a very important friend in this work, and that friend is the advisory committee. The advisory committee is town meeting standing committee and meets year-round to examine executive branch budgets. The executive committee works hard serving to investigate, question, and review each item that comes before the town meeting. You should pay close attention because they put a lot of effort into it and they have a lot of knowledge available to help with the decision-making that goes on here. The procedural rules that work for this legislative body are summarized as follows. All non-voters except consultants advising town boards would sit in the non-voter section, and they have green tags to indicate that they are non-voters. Generally, only registered voters may address the meeting. However, I will assume the consent of the meeting to allow non-voters to speak, provided they are duly recognized, unless a timely objection is raised. Persons wishing to address the meeting must, each time, rise to speak, go to a microphone, and identify themselves to the meeting by their name and address. This courtesy shows respect to those present and helps in the keeping of the meeting minutes. Speakers representing a board, community group, or a client should state that relationship for the meeting. If you are an article sponsor, make your motion before you make your pitch. Otherwise, I'll rule you out of order. After making a motion, an article sponsor will be allowed up to 10 minutes for a presentation. Sponsors of resolutions will be allowed 5 minutes. Sponsors need not use the full amount of time, and remember, brevity is the soul of wit. Every motion presented must be seconded. No motion is in order until we have a second. Town meeting members are urged to speak from the center microphone. I attempt to recognize members in the order in which they arrive at the microphones. A member may address the meeting only after being recognized. Shouting from the floor, speaking without recognition, shows disrespect for the town meeting and will not be allowed. Speakers from the floor are allowed 5 minutes on the first round of discussion and 3 minutes on a second round. A speaker from the floor who wishes to address the meeting a second time must wait until all persons who haven't yet spoken have their turn. Please confine your remarks to the motion that is on the floor. Address only matters of interest that relate to that motion, and don't indulge in personal discussion or in any way attack the motives of meeting members. You may ask questions of any town official through me. Be advised that a town official may choose not to respond or may respond in a way that doesn't satisfy you. Neither I nor the meeting has the power to compel an answer, in which case your only recourse is to draw your own conclusions from the quality of the response and to vote accordingly. Should you tire of debate, you may suffer in silence, or you may offer the motion, I move the question. Remember this important procedural point. You may not make a motion to move the question after making a speech. Please just make the motion and save your speech. A point of order relates only to questions of procedure and is not a mechanism for reviving an article or prolonging a debate. However, if someone does have a question, it's an appropriate way to ask a question, stand at the microphone, say point of order. We want to make sure if there are questions, if something is unclear, that everyone has a chance to understand it and no one misses out on something simply because they didn't understand what was before the meeting or what the procedure was. So if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask. On voice votes, I will listen and make a ruling on whether a motion passes or fails, if I can, based upon the voice vote. If you question my call, please rise. If 7 or more voters rise, I will ask for a teller-counted vote. The teller will count only those who are seated or in the bleachers. Standing in the back of the room, voters will not be counted. Under Section 2015 of our bylaws, I'm allowed to declare a 2/3 vote if that is questioned. If I declare a vote to pass by 2/3, if 7 people or 7 voters question that call, then we will actually take a count. The acoustics in this room are not the greatest. If people are having trouble hearing, you may consider trying to move. Some places are better than others, and if you are having a difficulty, please let us know so that you don't miss anything that we're doing here. Last but not least, silence your cell phones. And if anyone is unable for any reason to come to one of the microphones, we do have a wireless microphone available if it's needed. If you raise your hand, we can get that microphone to you. With that, I think we're ready to move on to the special town meeting. What we were going to do at the initial of this meeting is, as we've done in the past years, ask the meeting to consider a consent agenda. And this is a way to vote as a group on a number of articles which are fairly routine and necessary business to accomplish as we go through the meetings. Because these are routine, we present them all as one, but we don't, if someone has questions or wants to have a discussion on a particular article, I'm going to read which of those articles will be in the consent agenda. And if you have a question on any of these articles and want to have a separate discussion, just say hold as I read that article. We'll remove it from the consent agenda, and then that'll be dealt with separately in order as we go along. The consent agenda for the special town meeting consists of Article 1, which is unpaid bills for the prior fiscal year. Article 2, which is budget reconciliations, balancing the budget from that was approved back at the in the fall. And Article number 6, which is the grant of a utility easement at Musquashnet. I knew I was going to trip on this. Musquashnet Avenue. And we're prepared to have a motion on the consent. There are no holds, so those three articles will be taken as one, and we have a motion from the Board of Selectmen. Mr. Vignani.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move that the town vote to take Articles 1, unpaid prior year bills, 2, fiscal year 23 budget reconciliations, and 6, Musquashnet Ave grant of easement out of order, and that they be passed as consent in accordance with motions shown on the consent agenda distributed this evening.
Have a second. Motion is seconded. We would ask for a recommendation from the advisory committee.
Yes, this is good housekeeping, and it's very efficient, so we endorse it 100%.
Thank you. Because this involves unpaid bills of the prior year, it requires a 9/10 vote, which essentially is a unanimous one. So I'm hoping that we can call this as a unanimous vote. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda? There being none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Declare it a unanimous vote. Thank you. We'll now move now to Article Article 3. Mr. Vignani.
Thank you again, Mr. Moderator. I move that the town appropriate the sum of $475,000 for the purpose of retiring the debt for the following purposes, and to fund such appropriations, transfer $475,000 from the Widows Walk Enterprise retained earnings.
We have a second. Motion is seconded. Mr. Vignani.
Thank you. This motion moves $475,000 from the Widows Walk retained earning funds and pays down the debt of over $700,000 that we went into to purchase, to build the new clubhouse. After we do this, the debt for the clubhouse will be under $300,000, and with the performance that we have now, we're hoping to pay that off early as well. The Select Board voted 5-0 unanimously in favor of this motion.
May we have a recommendation from the advisory committee?
Yes, this is a good fiscal move. It puts the Widows Walk Enterprise Fund in a good forward motion. Your advisory committee voted unanimous 8-0 in favor of the article.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion from the floor? Hearing none, we'll set it to a vote. This requires a majority vote. All those in favor of the motion as presented say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. It's a unanimous vote. Moving now to Article 4.
Thank you again. I move that the town indefinitely postpone action on this article. This was voted 5-0 unanimously by the Select Board.
We have a second for the motion. Mr. Vignani?
A little quick there. This was a motion to retire some debt, but we've realized that we may need the use of it a little bit more for the green sand filter that's going on at the water treatment plant. So we're going to hold this off until we find out the result of that and then put it before you at the next town meeting.
Thank you. For the advisory committee.
Again, we were in favor of this. We did not take a vote on the postponement. We did at one point to vote 8-0 in favor of the actual article, but that's obviously not germane at this point.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on Article 4, the rescission of borrowing, the motion to pass over this article? Hearing none, we'll take it to a vote. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. It's a unanimous vote. Next is Article 5, which is the Community Preservation Act.
Thank you again. I move that the town act on recommendations from the Community Preservation Committee to appropriate the sum of money as indicated below. Appropriation for these items below are to be extended from the Community Preservation undesignated funds unless otherwise indicated. All such sums appropriated are further to be expended subject to all terms and conditions of the applications regarding such projects filed with the CPC and the votes of the CPC regarding approval of such items. Item number 1 is $28,954 from the Community Preservation Fund balance to be reserved for the creation and support of community housing consistent with the Act. Fiscal year 23 previously voted set-asides that were insufficient to meet the 10% requirement due to the additional state match being received. Number 2 is $25,000, which is for the historic portion for the Mordecai Lincoln driveway and parking engineering.
Do we have a recommendation from the advisory committee?
Second.
We've got a second.
Thank you. These are two fund transfers for CPC. The first one, you have to pay 10% of your funds into 3 buckets, and the housing bucket was not met at the last allocation, so we have to add about $29,000 to that, and that will be used at a future time. The second one is allocating $25,000 to design a possible parking area at Mordecai Lincoln. This property was passed at the last town meeting, and we want the town to be able to utilize that property, so we're going to design some way to get people over there to look at that beautiful piece. The Select Board voted 5-0 unanimously in favor of this.
Okay, now we'll ask for the report of the advisory committee.
The advisory committee voted unanimously in favor of recommending both of these. Just on the parking for Mordecai Lincoln, the Mordecai Lincoln is $152,000 in total, but this portion is being put in the special town meeting so that we can get going on it, and it would begin the engineering of the parking and driveway improvements with the intention of having approximately 13 spaces there just for the front of the property. Thank you.
Thank you. And because this is a community preservation fund spending, the statute requires a recommendation from the Community Preservation Committee. Mr. Fennelly, does the committee have a recommendation?
Yes, I'll turn it over to Schuyler Chick.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Community Preservation Committee voted unanimously in favor of both of these items under Article 5.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on the 2 items for under the Community Preservation Act for the special town meeting? Hearing from no one, I would ask we'll take this to a vote. This requires a majority vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed to the motion say nay. It's a unanimous affirmative vote. Next item is Article 6, which we've taken care of in the consent agenda. We next come to Article 7, which is a general bylaw amendment dealing with the waterways. Ms. Curran.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move that the town amend sections 30900 waterways of the bylaws of the town of Scituate as follows, by adding a new section 30911 as follows. Section 30911, purpose: to develop, implement, and maintain laws and regulations that will enhance and preserve the ecological health, pristine waters, and the natural beauty of waters within the limits of the town of Scituate for future generations, to preserve the public peace, good order, and welfare, to protect the coastal waters within the limits of the town of Scituate and all beaches, flats, tidelands, and submerged lands lying seaward of the line of the mean high water, to prevent encroachments therein, to promote, preserve, and protect the exercise and enjoyment of the public right of fishing, fowling, and navigation, to promote, preserve, and protect the exercise of marine and agricultural uses and pursuits while sustaining harmony among all users of waters within the limits of the town of Scituate. And by adding a new section 30912 as follows. Section 30912, fair access to fish, fowl, and navigate. Notwithstanding any provisions of these bylaws to the contrary, fair access to waters within the limits to fish, fowl, and navigate is hereby recognized to exist within the waters of the town of Scituate. The above described activities may, subject to certain rules and regulations, occur on holidays, weekdays, and weekends by night or day, and shall include the attendant incidental impacts associated with normally accepted fishing, fowling, and navigation practices. It is hereby determined that whatever impact may be caused to others through the normal practice of accepted fishing, fowling, and navigation practices is more than offset by the benefits of each of these activities to the community and society in general, and fair and equitable access to the waters within the town of Scituate for such activities. The benefits and protections of this bylaw are intended to apply exclusively to those recreational and commercial accepted fishing, fowling, and navigation operations and activities conducted in accordance with generally accepted fishing, fowling, and navigation practices. Moreover, nothing in this bylaw shall be deemed as acquiring any interest in land or as imposing any land use regulations, which is properly the subject of state statute, regulation, or local zoning law. And lastly, by adding a new section 30992 as follows, rules and regulations, which the select board shall prepare and may amend from time to time after reasonable public notice and hearing and approval of the select board regulations governing the uses set forth in this section 30900.
We have a second. We have a second for the motion. You have a recommendation from the board? Selectman?
Yep, thank you. This motion is really to protect our rights as citizens over all of our waters throughout Scituate. Recommended language by our council to add into our bylaws for all of our own protection. The select board voted unanimously in favor of the article and recommends approval of this motion.
Thank you. We have a recommendation from the advisory committee. Mr. Kelly.
Who could not be in favor of a new bylaw that allows us to go fowling? This bylaw is consistent with centuries-old Commonwealth of Massachusetts law. The advisory committee voted 8-0 in favor of this article.
Thank you. Any discussion from the floor on Article 7, special warrant? Hearing none, we'll go to a vote. This requires a majority vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. It's unanimous vote. Move now to Article 8, which is another general bylaw amendment. Mr. Vignani.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Move Article 8. I move that the town amend the Town of Scituate General Bylaws, Section 30100, miscellaneous, by adding the new section, Section 30125, overnight recreational vehicle parking on public property. No person shall park a recreational vehicle on town-owned property between the hours of 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. without prior written approval of the Select Board. A recreational vehicle is a motor vehicle or trailer that includes living quarters designed for accommodation. Any person that violates this bylaw will be punished with a fine of $200 per occurrence. This section of the bylaw shall not prohibit unhoused individuals from sleeping outdoors on public property when no alternative shelter is available to them.
We have a second. Motion is seconded. Mr. Vignani?
Thank you. Many of you may remember that this article was brought before you at the last town meeting, and some of the attendees had concerns with some of the wording and thought that it could be misapplied. Town council went to the Attorney General and spoke to them about this. They adjusted the language to address this concern, and the current language specifically prohibits recreational vehicles from parking overnight in town-owned land without permission, as well as clarifies that it does not impact any homelessness individuals in this bylaw. And you may remember this bylaw is being created because to address the problem that people are actually parking in Cole Parkway and vacationing there, using the facilities, putting chairs out, eating out in Cole Parkway, and we wanted to have something to combat that. The Select Board voted unanimously 5-0 in support of this article.
Thank you. Recommendation of the Advisory Committee.
As Tony said, this is basically a rewrite of part of the article to address the actual issue that we wanted to address, which was camping in Cole Parkway. The Advisory Committee voted 8-0 in favor.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion from the floor on Article 8? Not hearing from anyone, we'll take a vote. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. It's a unanimous vote. Move to ask for a motion to dissolve the special town meeting. So moved, seconded. All in favor of dissolving the special town meeting, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Good. Before we get to the annual town meeting, one thing I neglected to mention in the introduction is that our Ship Shape Day in Scituate will be on May 6th. Show up at the town hall, get a bag, and pick up the debris on your street. May 7th, the town will be a much nicer place to visit, so I encourage everybody to pitch in for Ship Shape Day on May 6th. We'll now move to the annual town meeting. As we did in the prior meeting, we have a consent agenda. Same process. I will read through each of the articles and the subject matter that's covered. And if anyone wants to pull one of these items out, simply say hold. We'll remove it from the consent agenda, and we'll vote the remainder as a unit. Those articles are Article 1, compensation of elected officials. Article 2, reports of boards and committees. Article 5, the Waterways Enterprise Fund budget. Article 6, the Golf Course Enterprise Fund budget. Article 7, the Wastewater Enterprise Fund budget. Article 8, the Transfer Station Enterprise budget. Article 9, the Water Enterprise Fund budget. Article 10, the Stabilization Fund Excess Levy Capacity Appropriation. Article 11, the limits set for each of the revolving funds. Article 13, the reconciliation of the accounts within the community preservation funds. And finally, Article 15, which is the acceptance of liability for Chapter 91 work by the Department of Environmental Protection in the town. Nothing being held, would ask for a motion on the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move that the town vote to take Articles 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13, and 15 out of order and that they be passed by consent in accordance with the motion shown on the consent agenda distributed this evening.
We have a second for that motion?
The Select Board voted unanimously 5-0 in favor of this motion.
I'd ask for the recommendation of the Advisory Committee.
Advisory voted in favor, 8-0. It's just a matter of efficient streamlining.
Okay, is there any discussion on the consent agenda? Seeing no one at the mics, I'd ask for a vote. This requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor of the consent agenda motion, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. It's a unanimous vote. Moving now to Article 3 of the annual town meeting. Article 3 is the capital improvement plan, and Article 4 is the budget. So I think it's appropriate at this time, if they so desire, we hear from the Board of Selectmen, the Advisory Committee, and the Capital Planning Committee in terms of just an overview of the financial situation as we deal with both the capital budget and the operating budget. Mr. Vignani for the Selectmen.
Thank you. You've seen a lot of me tonight. This is it. So at this point, I just want to give you a quick overview on the financial condition of the town. As we've heard, I've been sitting at this table for 6 years, this table for 15 years, and this is by far the strongest financial condition that this town has been in. And when I say financial condition, I mean that we have policies in place and we actually follow them. We have a comprehensive process that we go through, which includes a financial forecasting committee that is fully represented and has a conservative mindset, which prepares us for any type of emergency we may run into. We use any free cash that we have to help our capital plan. The budget and capital plan are fully vetted by multiple boards. And again, all of this is audited annually by an outside agency. On top of that, the policies, the process, we just frankly have a great team. They're knowledgeable, they're dedicated to the town, and they all work very well together. And this is evident by all the great awards and recognition that they get from both the state and county levels. We just heard from them last meeting. And on top of that, we're a small town and we have the second highest bond rating that you can have at AA+. So you should feel very confident that your tax dollars are being managed well, they're being accounted for accurately, and they're being spent properly. And I could thank 75 people right now, but I do want to just call out some of the managers of our financial team that do this. We have Joe DeVito. I don't know if you're here tonight, Joe. If you are, town assessor. We've got Pam Avatabla. I saw Pam somewhere over here. The town treasurer does a spectacular job. School committee, we have Dr. Dutch and Superintendent Burkhead do a spectacular job on the school side. We have Nancy Holt to my right. I don't have to say much. She's the glue that keeps it all together. And then Jim Boudreau, the town administrator in the back, that really keeps the whole team functioning well. So the town administrator puts a level service budget before us. This is typical, right? Your taxes go up 2.5%. That money goes towards paying salary increases and just the increased cost of doing business. That happens every year, and it's really our board's role to look at this stuff and try and find out what services we want to add to incrementally improve the town. And this year we picked out 2 initiatives that we thought were very important. The first one is enforcement of our bylaws, which are building, Concom, zoning bylaws. So we want to have an initiative where we are more forceful with what they have to be. And then the second one is to find new ways and add new channels of communication to get information out to the residents of the town. Right? We do the best job that we can, but still we talk to people and they don't know that we're building a new water treatment plant, or they don't know that the top's coming off the lighthouse, or they don't know that there's a new recreational field here. So somehow we've got to find a new way to get information out to the public so that they're aware of things and they can be involved at whatever level they want to be. The second part of our financial whole equation is the capital plan. So there's about an $8.7 million capital plan before you today. And our goal with capital is to minimize borrowing. So what we do is we try and keep it level. we try and keep the amount on the general fund at the same amount every year. So the way we do that is when old projects drop off, we add new projects in. And the way we do that is we, like I said before, we budget conservatively and we use our free cash to fund our capital items. And we've been doing that very successfully for a number of years, and kudos to the Capital Planning Committee that do that, and Nancy and Jim for funding all that. The other way that we pay for things is with grant money. Our team is very, very good at getting grants. So Nancy just told me yesterday that over the past 16 months, we have almost $12 million in grant revenue that we've brought into the town. And that helps pay for... So I think Mike's here somewhere. We've got a bunch of IT stuff that got paid for by grants. The fire department does a great job getting grants to get apparatuses purchased. Planning does a great job getting grants to do feasibility studies. So we do an awesome job finding that extra money. The last piece of the puzzle, kind of budget-wise, is our enterprise funds. So we've got 5 enterprise funds, and those aren't paid with tax dollars, they're paid with user fees. And we've got 5 of them. We've got Waterways, which is doing great things with putting new docks in there. We've got Widows Walk, which has a new clubhouse. It's spectacular. But our main focus has been on the water and the sewer enterprise funds. And really, those are big ticket items that we're investing in heavily so that we can expand and improve our current operations. You're all familiar with that if you're at this meeting. All right. All of these funds are running within budget, and they fund their capital projects either through their retained earnings or through us, unfortunately, having to raise user fees. The last piece of the puzzle is CPC, which we just talked about a minute ago. So this is funded by a 3% tax assessed to all your properties, and this program funds many worthwhile projects that, frankly, the general budget just couldn't do. Right? You can't build a park, you can't build a field, you can't buy all this land on a regular basis through your general budget, and that's what this is used for. And some of the recent projects are Mordecai Lincoln property, we're redoing the lighthouse, we just built a great field out the back there, we've put affordable housing at Central Parks, and we've added walking trails to the West End. That committee does a spectacular job in vetting all those projects, and it really helps the town. So I'll finish like I began. The Select Board is very, very proud of the town's current financial condition, and we're happy to send you this balanced budget and capital plan for your review this evening.
Thank you. Or if there's anything that the advisory committee would like to add in terms of the overview of the capital plan and the operating budget, now's your chance.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thinking of when I started on capital planning in 2006 and seeing where it is today, seeing how these budgets and the executive, the finance committee, we are so far ahead of where we were back then in being able to be proactive and reactive, being pragmatic and practical, and to have the bond rating we have. I think you all can rest assured that the work is being done. And a compliment to this team over here and to all the department heads that take their budgets very seriously. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, at this point, we'll move to Article 4, which is, Article 3, rather, which is the capital improvement plan. Can we have a motion?
I apologize ahead of time. This is going to take a while. Excuse me. I move that the town appropriate the sum of $8,709,488 for the purpose of funding the costs of the capital improvement plan submitted in accordance with Section 6.6 of the Scituate Town Charter, as printed in the warrant, and fund such appropriation in the following manner. Raise and appropriate $184,000. Transfer from the following available funds. Free cash, $3,971,174.61. General fund reserve premiums, $12,607.39. PEG Access Revolving Fund, $167,614. Water Enterprise Retained Earnings, $501,190.18. Water Enterprise Reserve Premiums, $22,459.82. Sewer enterprise retained earnings, $373,135.89. Sewer enterprise reserve premiums, $20,265.19. Transfer station enterprise retained earnings, $90,517.82. Transfer station enterprise reserve premiums of $1,626.54. Waterways enterprise retained earnings, $61,328.24. Sewer main inspection program, line item, $2,249.92. Replace the 2010 loader, $357.35. Yard jockey replacement, $385.20. Unpaid by bills, $133.09. Security upgrades, $442.76. And authorize the treasurer, with the approval of the select board, to borrow the sum of $3,300,000 in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 44, subsection 7 and 8, or any other enabling authority for the purposes as indicated in the printed warrant, and further, that the select board are authorized to apply for grants, gifts, or donations for the purposes of this vote from federal, state, or private sources. And the said select board are hereby authorized to accept such grants, gifts, or donations on behalf of the town, and that the amount of the authorized borrowing shall be reduced by the amount of grants, gifts, and donations received prior to any such borrowing.
Have the motion. Do we have a second? We have a second. Motion has been seconded. Want to continue?
So one thing I do want to point out, besides the wonderful work by the Capital Planning Committee, if anyone has not been on cleargov.com, this was something that last year, it's a transparency software, and Nancy Holt and other staff members have been on. You can actually see photos and pictures of some of the items that we're talking about. If you want to see the 1994 mower that we're replacing, there's 3 or 4 photos. There's over, I think, 70 or 80 photos, I believe, that are up there. So the work of your town employees to try to give you information of what's on there is absolutely fascinating, and something I know we hope to continue. And with that, I will let you know that the Select Board unanimously approved this motion.
Thank you, Mr. Goodrich. From the Advisory Committee, recommendation.
Your advisory committee has met with all the departments and the Capital Planning Committee several times. The Capital Planning Committee actually was able to meet enough in advance to be able to provide the right information. All of these requests are graded in accordance with state rating procedures. True to form, the photographs of some of this equipment is kind of colorfully scary. It's an efficient budget. There's the $1 million addition because of the Jericho Road issue, where the gas company is going to go in and tear the road up, and we might as well take advantage of saving money on repaving it. So that has been advanced into this budget as well. So we voted unanimous 8-0 in favor of the plan as submitted.
Thank you. And we also have a recommendation, if we could, from the Capital Planning Committee. Mr. Kasia.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. A lot of what I wrote down may be redundant. I want to start off first mentioning one more member of Capital Planning that participated in the work leading up to this meeting. Jack Whitaker has just resigned from Capital Planning. He's been on the committee for 12 years, has been an integral part in the discussions that we have, and I just want to recognize and thank him for all his hard work for the 12 years. So this, again, may be a little redundant. This year we saw a couple changes for the committee. The town has started using the online capital budgeting software, which has eliminated those old giant binders, I don't know if anybody remembers, and likely saved millions of trees from becoming paper. We also started using the new budget timeline, which Jamie mentioned. We began our meetings in October and ran weekly into December, which was 2 months 2 months earlier than previous years. So the town administrator recommended $7,709,488 in requests out of over $2 million requested by all town departments. After rigorous review, the Capital Planning Committee voted to recommend all but 2 of these requests. An MS4 project, which we felt would be added to the engineering department's operational budget, and one of the trucks requested by the highway department, as we felt there were too many vehicles being funded this year. There was also a late request for $1 million for water main replacement on Jericho Road to coincide with an Eversource project to replace the gas mains. This was subsequently approved by the committee also. To get a better understanding of why different items were approved, you can refer to all of our meeting minutes on the town website. The only borrowing in the capital plan this year was the $3.3 million for water main replacement. Moving forward, the Capital Planning Committee will be working with the Select Board, the Town Administrator, and the Finance Director to more clearly identify projects that may be operational expenses rather than capital expenses, and become better advisors to the Board and better stewards of your taxpayers' funds. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any discussion, questions on Article 3, the Capital Improvement Plan? Lady to my right.
Short lady. Jean Rankin, 45 Marshall Ave. Just a quick clarification on letter I, roads, sidewalks, drainage, culvert. Where's that 200,000? Where's with those improvements being made? We have a lot of flooding down at Egypt Beach continually, and I didn't know if this was that project. Thank you.
Mr. Boudreau has an answer, I believe.
The 200,000 in the capital is not a particular project. That's used by the engineering department to do small jobs, some planning and engineering, and then we have separate budgets that we use to do the drainage project.
Thank you. Any further questions, discussion on Article 3 and the capital improvements? Hearing none, this motion requires a 2/3 vote due to the borrowing. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. I declare it a unanimous vote. Moving now to Article 4, which is the operating budget. We have a motion from Mr. Vignani, I believe.
I move that the town raise and appropriate $92,761,436.96 and transfer from the Gulf Enterprise Fund $70,520 and from the Waterways Enterprise Fund $299,650 and from the Water Department Enterprise Fund $489,197 and from the Transportation Enterprise Fund $166,484, and from the Waterways Enterprise Fund, $177,641, and from Debt Premium Reserve, $1,792. From the PEG Access Cable Revolving Fund, $291,457. From the Wind Turbine Revolving Fund, $100,000. From the Solar Array Revolving Fund, $100,000. From the Septic Land Fund, $12,344. From the Premium Reserve for the Senior Center, $742.04. From the Massachusetts School Building Association Reserve, $53,930. Totaling $94,525,194 to the general fund for the purpose of funding personal services and expenses for town operations as be necessary for the fiscal year commencing July 1st, 2023.
Do we have a second?
Motion is seconded. You've got all the details in front of you. Every department was reviewed by both the Select Board and the Advisory Committee. Their book gives details on all of it. As we said, it's level service funding as we did before with a few adjustments. There's not a lot of new hires there, and the Select Board voted unanimously 3-0 in motion in favor of this article. Thank you. Do we have a recommendation from Advisory, please?
Your advisory committee voted in favor 8-0. The budget is level funded with the exception of obviously understanding increases, regional school assessments, the pension increases, and health care, health insurance. It is trending in the right fiscal direction in accordance with our forecasts. So we were unanimous.
Because this is the budget, what I will do is I'll read through each section. If anyone wants to hold a department or a section of the budget for discussion, please say hold. We'll set that aside. The ones that are not set aside, we will vote on as a unit, and then we'll go back to have discussion, get any questions that you might have on any issue that's been held. So we'll go through it. Town administration. Advisory Committee. Reserve Fund. Finance Director / Town Accountant. Assessors. Treasurer Collector. Information Technology. Tax foreclosures. Cable TV. Town Clerk. Planning and Community Development. Property liability insurance, police, fire, combined public safety dispatch, shellfish, school department, regional school assessments, public works, facilities, snow and ice, street lights and beacons, Board of Health, Council on Aging, Veterans Agent, Commission on Disabilities, Library, Recreation, Beautification, Historical Buildings, Debt and Interest, Plymouth County Retirement, Workmen's Compensation, Unemployment Insurance, Contributory Group Insurance, Federal Taxes. Nothing having been held, we will move to, is there any discussion on the unit, the budget as a unit? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. This requires a majority vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. It's a unanimous vote. Moving now to Article 11, 12. All right, 12. Okay, next we've skipped over the articles that we took care of in the consent agenda. That brings us to Article 12, which is the community preservation. Select Person Conley is going to present a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move that the town hear and act on the recommendations from the Community Preservation Committee on the fiscal year 2024 community preservation budget and pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 44B, to appropriate and/or reserve the sums of money as indicated below. 1, to meet the administrative expenses and all other necessary and proper expenses of the CPC for the fiscal year 2024. 2, for the acquisition, creation, and preservation of open space. 3, for the acquisition, preservation, rehabilitation, and restoration of historical resources. I think I missed one. For the restoration of land for recreational use. Appropriations for the items below are to be expended first from any existing reserves for the purpose of such item, then appropriated from Community Preservation FY 2024 estimated revenues, with any excess to be appropriated from the Community Preservation unreserved funds unless otherwise specified below. All such sums are appropriated are further to be expended to all of the terms and conditions of the applications regarding such projects filed with the CPC and the votes of the CPC regarding approval of such items. 4, $272,059 from Community Preservation FY 2024 estimated revenues to be reserved for the creation and support of community housing consistent with the Act. 2, $272,059 from Community Preservation FY 2024 estimated revenues to be reserved for the acquisition and preservation of historic resources consistent with the Act. 3, $272,059 from Community Preservation FY 2024 estimated revenues to be reserved for acquisition and preservation of open space consistent with the Act. 4, $68,015 from Community Preservation FY 2024 estimated revenues for administrative expenses of the Community Preservation Committee. 5, $271,801 from Community Preservation FY 2024 estimated revenues and premiums reserved for payment of debt relevant to the athletic field renovation project voted as Article 12 Annual Town Meeting 04-2019. 6, $16,830 recreation for beach signage. 7, $82,500 from historic for Cudworth House restoration. 8, $300,000 from recreation for the Pier 44 Park design and engineering. 9, $30,991 from historic for the North Scituate train canopy restoration. 10, $260,000 from recreation for the Purple Dinosaur Playground. 11, $548,924 for community housing, the Wheeler Park window replacement. 12, $400,000 recreation, Jenkins School Playground. And 13, $132,000 historic for the Mordecai Lincoln driveway and parking construction. The Board of...
I have a motion. Can we have a second? I have a second.
Second?
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. The Select Board voted 5-0 in favor of this article, and we want to especially thank the Community Preservation Committee for all of the hard work they do on vetting the applications and getting them to the point where they're recommending to you, town meeting, that you approve them, and we thank them very much.
Thank you. We have a recommendation from the Advisory Committee.
The Advisory Committee recommended all the items unanimously in the article except for the design and engineering study for the Pier 44 project, item 8. We initially voted 0 to 8 against the project, and the concerns were total cost of design and engineering phase, which would include CPC funds, a grant, and money currently under contract with the firm who is providing some of the design work for the project that you may have seen the drawings in the most recent poll that they've come out with. I do want to point out that there is an error in the advisory booklet. The total project costs that we're talking about here are 400, but 300 is what we're asking for from CPA. So that CPA funds. The other issue that the advisory committee had was that we did not believe that there was sufficient parking in the plan for the site, given the discussions about the use of the site and potentially for events for larger groups of folks, and we felt that there could be a deterrent for everyone to be able to access the site without sufficient parking. However, tonight we did meet again with the CPC, and we revoted the matter, and we now have a positive recommendation of 5-4. The dissenters continue to be concerned about the overall costs prior to the shovel in the ground could be as high as 700,000, but, and the parking, I think, is still a matter to be decided, but we felt that since the purpose of this really is to just get the thing going and to get the work done so that we know what can be done on the site, the committee did vote in favor of this part of the article. Thank you.
Thank you. And the statute requires we have a recommendation and vote from the Community Preservation Committee on these expenditures. Mr. Fennelly.
Schuyler Chick again.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you, Mr. Moderator. Since the town adopted the Community Preservation Act in 2002, $23 million has been raised through the tax levy. In that time, the town has received an additional $10.5 million in matching funds from the state for more than a 45% return on our tax dollars. This year, the committee received several community-driven applications, which shows dedication by our residents. As always, CPC does not initiate projects, but rather we provide guidance to applicants and approve funding following a vetting process. The applicants subsequently manage the approved projects. This year, CPC approved 8 applications for annual town meeting. The first 4 items of this article are administrative items required by state law under the Community Preservation Act. Items 1 to 3 are the required 10% set-asides for each community housing, historic resources, and open space. Each set-aside amount is $272,059 to be reserved for use in the next fiscal year. Item 4 is $68,015 reserved for CPC administrative expenses. This represents 2.5% of the estimated revenues. State law allows 5% to be set aside, but CPC never spends that much, leaving more funds available for actual projects. Item 5 is the CPC's annual reduction of the debt for the high school athletic fields project, approved at town meeting in 2019. This year's amount is $271,801. Item 6 is a request for $16,830 for beach signage. This request is from the Beach Commission to create new entry signage at each of the town's 6 beaches, including Egypt, Hummerock, Minot, Museum, Peggotty, and Sand Hills. The signage will replace existing mismatched signage and will conform to the Scituate sign standards seen throughout town. And there is an example on page 62 of your booklet. The CPC voted unanimously to approve this request. Item 7 is a request for $82,500 for the Cudworth House restoration. This request is from the Scituate Historical Society for improvements to the historic 1797 property on First Parish Road. The Society has already begun restoration work using other funds of theirs in order to restore and protect some of the historic contents following a skunk infestation and issues with mold. This request from CPC is specifically for design and construction of universally accessible walkways and seating areas that will connect the house to the barn, to the animal pound, and the parking lot that was constructed as part of the Senior Center and Veterans Memorial Gym project. It will also be used for developing interpretive areas and wayfinding signage, building granite steps and a pathway between the house and the barn, enlarging the rear doorway to the house with a path for wheelchair access. This will provide universal access into the rear of the house with visual access to the adjoining rooms. Funds will also be used for preserving, restoring, and reinstalling the Cudworth loom and preserving 5 rare colonial-era needlepoint samplers for museum display. The total project cost is approximately $136,000, with $82,500 from CPC, and the committee voted unanimously to approve this request. Item 8 is a request for $300,000 for Pier 44 park design and engineering. This is a request from the Scituate Harbor Advisory Redevelopment Commission for final design, engineering, and permitting of the park. In 2010, town meeting approved the purchase of the site, and subsequent community outreach concluded that the creation of a public park would be the best use of this town-owned site. The last few years have seen the greatest momentum in moving the creation of a public park on the harbor into reality. In 2022, the Commission hired a design consultant team for initial site investigations, full topographical survey, feasibility study, concept design work, and public outreach. That work is still ongoing. In addition to the 60 meetings about this project, the applicant has hosted public informational meetings earlier this year and conducted an online survey to solicit public input. Nearly 1,300 residents responded to that survey. This request is not to select a final design or to pick individual park features. That work is ongoing under the current consultant contract through further public outreach and collaboration with town departments and committees. The purpose of this request is to have funds available for the multidisciplinary consultant team necessary for final design and engineering once the final concept plan is developed. The funds will be used for resource area delineation, building demolition hazard abatement plan, geotechnical analysis to evaluate existing soil structure for future improvements. That could include a boardwalk, a possible pavilion, site lights, structural design to maintain or enhance the existing protective seawall, and to determine groundwater elevation for stormwater management design. Extensive environmental permitting is expected through the Conservation Commission, MEPA at the state level, Chapter 91, and the Army Corps of Engineers, to name a few. Permitting is critical and time-consuming dealing with multiple regulatory agencies. That is one of the reasons why the request for this funding is now rather than once the current consultant team has finished their work. Funds will also be used to develop construction cost estimates, which will be supplied at milestone interims as the work is developed. There would be continued public outreach. There would also be identification and submission for grants for construction funding, and then final construction documents and final bid drawings and specifications for the construction of the park. In addition to this $300,000 request from the CPC, the town has also received a grant of $100,000 from the Metropolitan Area Planning Council for this effort, and the town continues to look for additional grants. The CPC voted unanimously in favor of this request. Item 9 is a request for $30,991 for the North Scituate train canopy restoration. This is from the Friends of North Scituate Village to complete a project that began several years ago using CPC funds. The project was slowed due to the pandemic, personnel changes, and increased material costs, but this is expected to be their final request, which is for the purchase and installation of the canopy lights, benches, tables, trash receptacles, and signage. And the CPC voted unanimously to approve this request. Item 10 is a request for $260,000 for the Purple Dinosaur Playground. This request is from the newly formed Friends of Purple Dinosaur Community Group, and funds will be used for the full reconstruction of the existing playground, which is approximately 30 years old and lacks compliance with today's safety standards. The new playground will include all new play structures, accessible pour-in-place rubber safety surfacing, new edging, and will maintain the purple dinosaur theme in the design of the new play pieces, and will continue to be geared toward ages 2 to 5 years. In addition to the $260,000 from CPC, the Friends Group is also working to fundraise another $30,000 for the project, and CPC voted unanimously to approve this request. Item 11 is a request for $548,924 for Wheeler Park 2 window replacement. This request is from the Scituate Housing Authority for the replacement of 313 windows in the Wheeler Park 2 affordable housing development. The facility consists of several multi-unit buildings constructed in 1975, including a total of 78 one-bedroom units. All the housing is affordable and primarily serves elderly and disabled residents. The existing windows are in very poor condition, they're leaking, and are difficult for many residents to operate. This request includes replacement of all of the windows in that Wheeler Park 2 development, including the soft cost for an architect, which is a necessary requirement of all housing authority projects. It also includes a contingency in case bids come in high. The Housing Authority obtained 3 quotes for this work in order to support this request, and the CPC voted unanimously to approve it. Item 12 is a request for $400,000 for the Jenkins School Playground, which comes from the Jenkins PTO and the Jenkins Playground Committee. Funds are requested to relocate and replace the existing playground at the school, which is over 20 years old and also has many safety issues, as determined recently by a certified playground safety inspector. The existing location is also problematic in that it is immediately adjacent to the rear of the school, causing noise issues and distractions for students. It also lacks visibility for teachers to supervise during recess and for police to have a clear line of sight to monitor the playground during off-school hours. The new playground will be accessible. It will be shifted further to the east where it has better visibility. It will be geared towards ages 5 to 12 as the current one is. It will be poured-in-place rubber safety surfacing and all new modern-day play equipment. In addition to the request from CPC, the PTO is working on fundraising an additional $40,000 for the project, and CPC voted unanimously to approve this request. And lastly, item 13 is a request for $132,000 for construction of the Mordecai Lincoln driveway and parking. This is the second of the two funding requests for the Mordecai Lincoln property tonight. This request is to fund the construction of the driveway and parking work that will be the result of the engineering work previously approved. Conservation Commission made this request, and they also received a quote for the work, and CPC approved this unanimously. As always, funds not spent on CPC projects are returned to the fund and become available for use on future projects. Thank you.
Thank you. We have any discussion on the items just listed in community preservation in Article 12? Gentleman at the mic on my right.
Hi, Michael Gibson, 142 Old Forge Road. I'd just like a little more information from advisory. You went from a unanimous against to just squeaking out a bare majority tonight on the Pier 44 project. I think just pushing something through to get it going without a fully developed plan's not a great idea to pass a blank check, and clearly there's a strong contingent on advisory that feels that way. So I'd like a little more information. Perhaps we shouldn't vote all these in one, maybe take them separately.
Go ahead. Want to respond to that?
Well, I won't respond for advisory. I think they would like to respond.
Yeah, no, from advisory, please.
I think it was made clear to us that there's a sense of urgency around the project, and there's a desire to begin the permitting and further final engineering phases of the study at the same time as the design is going on. And so we felt that that it was reasonable to allow that to happen.
With no fully developed plan for parking?
Correct.
Yeah, I would propose we don't vote all these as one, but obviously that's up to you, Mr. Moderator.
Well, we're just here to recommend. It's really up to you to decide what you want to vote, frankly.
I guess my only point is if I have an issue with one article, but or one item, but I'm fine with the other 12, my only choice is to vote the entire article down or vote yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
So I would propose we hold this one item from the article and vote it separately, because right now my only choices are voting yes when I may disagree with one item, but agree with the other 12, or voting no.
All right, and that item is which number?
Number 8.
Okay, so I think that makes sense for purposes of the clarity of the vote. Request has been made to hold out Article number 8, which is the Recreation Pier 44 Park Design and Engineering. So we'll put that aside for a moment. Is there any discussion on any of the other items in the community preservation article? Yes, ma'am. Lady on my left.
Sure.
Allison Short, 129 Branch Street. I'm just curious as to why Museum Beach is included in the signage when it's not a public beach in town.
You have a response from Community Preservation.
So this is the work of the Beach Commission. It's not something initiated by CPC, and I know they've reviewed it with the Select Board and other committees in town. I can't answer specifically why they have chosen to include that.
Okay. So who would I get in touch with?
The Beach Commission.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Other than item number 8, which is the Pier 44 Park Design and Engineering, is there any further discussion on any of the other items? Hearing none. Then this vote will be on the motion to approve all of the items in Article 12 except number 8, which is the Pier 44 Park Design and Engineering, which we'll hold a separate vote on. So all those in favor of the motion on Article 12, excluding item number 8, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay. It's a majority vote. All of those items are approved. We'll now move and have a discussion on item number 8, Recreation, $300,000 for the Pier 44 Park Design and Engineering. We'll hear first from the floor, lady on my left.
Linda Ferguson, 57 Kingsway. On the advisory committee, and I'm one of the people who did vote against this again. For as long as I can remember in this town, there has been a huge discussion about the lack of parking in the harbor. The only thing we've done since that I can remember is remove parking from Front Street when we redesigned it. We did not add any. We keep building residents and restaurants and stuff down there, and parking is at a premium. We look at properties all over the place, we don't have any. So I guess I would respectfully request that the Shark Committee and the design company and everything not move forward, vote this in, but not move forward with a design or anything that removes that parking lot until we have a committed design and everything to replace those spots somewhere else. Because we're looking at possibly building a park in Cole Parkway that is going to remove spots there to protect the harbor from flooding and sea rise and stuff. So if we're losing spots there and we're getting rid of the only parking lot that exists anywhere near the harbor, it just seems nonsensical. And I think that that was one of the issues with advisory. The other one was we have no idea how many people are going to be using this park. Take the building down, plant some grass, and see how it gets used. If there's hundreds of people using it and they want a big pavilion, move forward with that then. But to come up with a design now to do something with that park that we just don't even know, we don't have the infrastructure to support it. So I still am voting no, but they did eke out a positive thing from advisory.
Lady at the center mic.
My name is Patrice May. I live at 73 Tilden Road. I am representing the Scituate Harbor Cultural District, the Scituate West Cork Sister City, the South Shore Irish Heritage Trail, and many other regional and local committees, all in favor of this project. I will acknowledge that I am on the commission for the Pier 44 Park, and I would like to thank the Select Board and the Advisory Board. I know this was a difficult thing to come to, a consensus to come to, and obviously there was no consensus. I would like to address the parking. When we first reviewed quite a bit of community data that had been collected, we cycled through what all of the community wants were, and we came up with some concepts that responded to all of them, and we did recognize that parking would be an issue. We suggested that we utilize the sloop, which is on demand. We know that there's been some changes with it. The best news tonight, this is all pre-construction. None of the designs that have been put forth or that the CPC has reviewed are final. Parking is something we will consider. I would like to state something, that The entire town, the advisory committee, did have a chance to look at several designs. One had 14 parking spaces, which I'm hearing is not enough. I would also like to acknowledge each parking space represents 1% of the square footage. 14 spaces is 14% of that entire lot. Do we want to keep a parking spot? I think not. I think that, well, just the common thread in all of the work that I do is creative placemaking. We have an opportunity to make Scituate stand out in a really strong, phenomenal way. That this is a destination. You might remember about a year ago there was a commercial about Scituate. It was called See Scituate, a place that we live, we work, we learn, we play. Why do people come to Scituate? Because we have a beautiful coast. Do we want this phenomenal parcel that is on the water to be a parking lot? Or do we want it to be something iconic where people will come to it? And yes, there is a concern. Oh no, too many people are here. Where will they park? Well, let's find that solution together rather than shutting the door before we have an opportunity. If we don't go into some of these studies now, we will wait another year before we can do that. And that would be a shame and a loss. And all of the hard work that the commission has done for the past year and a half will be put on pause. So I hope that you will consider these thoughts that I'm putting forth today. Thank you.
Thank you. Lady on my left, the gentleman on my left.
Scott Greenbaum, 40 Damon Road. I think there's a need to get this park built immediately. There's already a group at 6 o'clock in the morning that does yoga in the parking lot at Jericho. I'm sure they'd like to have a real park to do their yoga stuff. And as far as parking, I've never heard of a dying commercial district say they need more parking. It's only growing ones. The fact that our merchants are asking for our parking is a testament to how well they are doing. They don't need more parking. The demand is there. People are coming. People will live around whatever parking there is. So I think we should get this going and get it built as soon as possible and pick up that ugly parking lot and get some green on the coast. And unfortunately, Pier 44 is, the building itself has lived its life. Thank you.
Thank you. Lady on my left.
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Brenda O'Brien. I live at 68 Indian Wind Drive. And I'm here representing the Scituate Cultural Council. I'd like to read the letter we submitted to the Select Board. Members of the Scituate Cultural Council are in agreement to support the proposal to develop the Scituate Harbor Park at former Pier 44 location and to receive community preservation funding in the amount of $300,000 for pre-construction activities. Scituate Harbor was designated by the state of Massachusetts as a cultural district in 2015 to reflect its vital role as a center for cultural, artistic, and economic activity for residents of and visitors to the town. Included within its boundaries is the proposed site for a harbor park. The Scituate Cultural Council sees the proposed waterfront park as an opportunity to further enhance the cultural district and the arts in Scituate at this underutilized and deteriorating location. We are excited by the proposed design concepts that include waterfront green space to showcase the arts, an outdoor non-paved gathering space for residents and visitors, a boardwalk, and public restrooms. That's on behalf of the council. Personally, as a resident in town, I'd like to say that during the pandemic, my husband and I enjoyed many walks up and down Jericho Road, and quite frankly, it's the only location where there's really open access to see the waterfront. There's so much private property otherwise blocking and obstructing the view, and you have to go all the way down to Museum Beach to be back out in the open space again. I personally vote for the park. I'm not worried about parking. I grew up on Joni Mitchell. You don't pave paradise and make parking. The last town meeting I came to, we voted to save that agricultural property in the north side of town. We didn't turn it into a parking lot. So let's make sure we're keeping our heads on straight about what it is we want for the beautiful future of the waterfront. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Gentleman on my left.
Eric McCarthy, 27 Grove Street.
I just ask a question real quick? What year did Scituate buy the lot? I think you said it, I just was...
Can we get an answer to that question?
2010.
Okay. That's what I thought. So 2010, and it's now 2023. It seems like only in Scituate it would take that long to approve a park. So a year ago, we all delayed a water treatment facility, and now it sounds like some people want to delay this. I think we need to stop delaying things that are inevitable. We need to do what's right for the town and move forward on things that are bettering our town and our community. Thank you.
Any further discussion on item number 8, the Pier 44 planning? Gentleman at the center.
Yes, Brian Poitras, 66 Lawson Road. I attended the meetings on the new proposal, and I'd like to thank the advisory committee for their voting in favor, because I believe, just as most speakers here, it's time to move forward on this proposal. And there are questions about parking, and that's something that still can be addressed. There are no final designs, and the process needs to move, and delay will be the worst thing for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the Pier 44 section of the Community Preservation Appropriations? Hearing none, we'll come to a vote. This requires a majority vote. All those in favor of the appropriation for the Pier 44 design, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no? No. I declare it a majority vote. 7 people want to rise and challenge that. The majority vote. We move now to the South Shore Regional School District and Article 15. Oops. Is that which 14. Article 14, which is an amendment to the agreement for the South Shore Regional School District. Ms. Curran for the Board of Selectmen.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move that the town approve the amended South Shore Regional Vocational School District Regional Agreement, a copy of which is on file with the town clerk's office.
Motion is seconded.
This article welcomes Marshfield into our regional district for the South Shore Vocational School, and you will see that the advisory board included many other language and punctuation amendments so nicely on page 81 for you to read. Those are the only amendments that were additionally added to the agreement. And the select board voted unanimously in favor of this article and recommends approval of the motion.
Thank you. Can we have a recommendation from the advisory committee? Patrice Petro.
Right, so the purpose of this article is to amend the current regional agreement to include the town of Marshfield as the 9th member of the community. Which was just alluded to, there's a few minor changes that have been recommended by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. So Marshfield's request to join the district necessitates an inclusion of the terms and conditions of the town's addition to the district, and those other minor changes, amendments must be approved by 6 of the 8 current member towns. The town of Marshfield will be required to provide funds to the district's stabilization fund. They will also need to pay an increasing share of the future debt until fiscal year 28, when a stable enrollment will have been established, and then a final debt share will be decided for them. So one other thing that we want to note is that there are some pending MSBA facility improvements, and so the addition of a 9th member should reduce the debt share for all the other towns for these improvements. We voted in support of the article 8-0 unanimously.
Thank you. Okay, is there any discussion on Article 14 to amend the South Shore Regional Agreement? Hearing none, we'll send this to a vote. The majority vote is required. All those in favor of the amendment contained in the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. I declare it a unanimous vote. Move now to Article 16, which is a zoning bylaw amendment on common driveways. We have a motion. Ms. Canfield.
I move that the town amend the zoning bylaws, Section 720, as indicated in the printed warrant.
Have a second. Motion is seconded. Ms. Canfield.
This article is proposed by the Planning Board to provide clarification about what the definition is and the acceptable installation of a common driveway. The proposed amendments are appropriate and have been vetted in public meetings and will help the Planning Board with the proper tools to ensure compliance. The Select Board voted unanimously in support of this article.
Thank you. The Advisory Committee recommendation.
The Advisory Committee voted 8-0 to recommend the amendment. This amendment is an administrative amendment and designed to provide clarity on interpretational aspects of the bylaw and improve common driveway access for public safety. The amendment was presented at the December 2022 public hearing without objection.
Thank you. And statute requires that we have a recommendation after a hearing from the Planning Board.
Well, good evening. The least sexy part of town meeting, I'm sorry to say, zoning. The Planning Board hereby reports that in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, a public hearing was held on this article on December 8, 2022, and closed on the same night. On February 9, 2023, the board voted unanimously to support the passage of the article at the April 10, 2023 annual town meeting. The changes to this article allow for the addition of some new standards for common driveways, as well as clarifications for the applicability, purpose, application requirements, and common driveway easement sections of the common driveway bylaw to ensure uniform interpretation of the bylaw. The Planning Board is finding variations in interpretation of the bylaw that need to be resolved. The Planning Board supports this article, and this article requires a 2/3 vote. So for clarification of Section 720, which is a very complicated common driveway bylaw, the points to note is that frontage and access must be per Mass General Law, Chapter 41. Access for the frontage must be real. It clarifies where the common driveway starts and where it ends, and the entire access area is for the benefit of the adjoining properties with a turnaround for fire equipment at the end. It clarifies the application requirements so that the entire lot served by the common driveway shall be shown on the plans. It requires that the common driveway easement to be submitted with the application. It requires electronic copies. It requires plans to be signed and recorded with the decision and the agreement. It clarifies that the fire department versus the deputy chief, plus the deputy chief has been responding, shall concur with the Planning Board on the driveway width. The changes of the length of a common driveway from 1,000 feet to 500 feet. And it clarifies drainage, turnaround, snow storage, signage, site distance, driveway location, grades, the radii of the driveways, and the driveway to the sole means of the access. And there have been several word changes suggested today, and Town Council has opined that the article is fine as printed in the warrant.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion on the zoning amendment for common driveways?
Okay.
Gentleman on my right, I see he has a green tag.
Okay, first of all, I have a green tag. My name is Steve Bjorklund. Some of you probably know me. I do a lot of development in town. I am now a resident of 861.
As I said before, if there's no objection, Mr. Bjorklund, I think, is a non-voter because he has that green label. No objection. Go ahead, Mr. Bjorklund.
Okay, thank you. And I'm not against the common driveway bylaw. I use it quite often. I understand a lot of the changes that the Planning Board wants. I apologize that I was not at the Planning Board's public hearing. I was away, but I did review this and went through And there are some changes in here that are very, very minor, and I went over them with the town planner today, and I think they can be made very simply. But there are a couple things that people should understand. If I can, there's a provision in here that it says the provisions of 720 common driveway shall not apply to any application filed with the planning board and the town clerk pursuant to section 720 prior to November 30th, 2022. In my opinion, that means that if I have a common driveway that was applied for before November 30th of 2022, I don't have to meet the requirements of this. So that's pretty critical, I think. What that should say is that you don't have to meet the new requirements, that you meet the requirements that are in place presently. You don't want to take all these driveways and just say you can do whatever you want. You don't have to meet these. That doesn't make any sense. There's another provision in here that says that no drainage shall go towards a public way. And that's in direct conflict with the stormwater bylaw that the town meeting passed, which says you cannot increase any runoff onto a public way. And it's extremely difficult for developers and homeowners, if they want to develop their own property. If you pitch towards the street right now, you have water going out in the street. The stormwater bylaw clearly states that you can't increase that, and that makes an awful lot of sense. But to say that you can't have a common driveway that will let any water go onto a public way is virtually impossible in half the areas in town. Again, I'm in favor of most of what they've got in the bylaw, but if they want to pass it the way it is, I think you're going to have some problems. So I don't know if it should be postponed and those things should be corrected. That's going to be up to town meeting. I just wanted to point out that there are a number of things in there that are, I believe, inconsistent. That's all.
Mr. Bjorka, we did concur with town council. He says this is perfectly fine. And you know, I know that you were not at our meetings, but we will emphasize again that we write zoning bylaws for the benefit of the town and not for developers. Sorry.
Thank you.
Oh, if I could.
Go ahead.
I can follow it up. I mean, and Patty, you can probably explain this. One section says that the physical access, okay, the presence of district physical impediments. Could you explain what a district physical impediment is to the public?
Where are you, Steve?
Hold on.
Okay, it's section 720.
You have a question for the planning board. Go ahead, Mr. Bjorklund.
Okay, in section 720.1, if you go to the third to bottom line, it says presence of district physical impediments. So if this is the way we're going to pass it, could you explain what district means?
That is a typo. It should be distinct.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, in section 720.3, on the third line, it talks about lots that are served for a common driveway. That should be by a common driveway, not for a common driveway.
Duly noted.
Okay. In section 720.3, at the bottom of it, the last paragraph says that a designing engineer must certify that structures meet existing zoning requirements. Engineers don't do that. Surveyors do. Should that say surveyors?
Not according to the lawyer. He said the designing engineer is fine. Thank you.
Okay. Engineers are not allowed to.
We're not going to get into a debate about engineers and surveyors.
Okay.
Any more questions?
No, I think it needs a little bit more work, that's all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Gentleman at the center mic.
Michael Gibson, 142 Old Forge Road. For what it's worth, the way that the article is written is that any other action may be taken relative thereto. If there's a typo, reach out to the planning board after this meeting. They can fix it. It's in the article. We don't need to have a discussion here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Okay.
We'll move to a vote. This requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor of the amendment to the zoning bylaw on common driveways as set out in Article 16, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. It's a unanimous vote. The article passes. We move now to Article 17, which is another zoning bylaw amendment on parking requirements. Before we do that, because I know that's the last article and people are going to want to leave, two people here should be recognized tonight. I'm informed just now that our fire chief, Chief Murphy, has indicated his plans for retirement, and this may be his last town meeting. So let's hear it for Chief Murphy and the service he's provided to the town. Thank you for your service, Chief, and good luck in your retirement. And I want to thank the town clerk. A lot of work goes into setting up this meeting, getting everything lined up, and it runs smoothly, and everyone has seats, and we have microphones at work, and the votes are kept. So let's hear it for the town clerk, Kathy Gardner. Okay, we'll get to Article 17 and parking requirements. Can't think of anything more exciting than to end the meeting. Karen Canfield for the Board of Selectmen.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. And while we're at it, let's thank the moderator for conducting this meeting in record time.
Thank you. Please, I promised 9 o'clock, so let's move it along.
I'd like to move that the town amend the zoning bylaws, section 760 is indicated in the printed warrant.
Thank you. Have a second? Have a second. Ms. Canfield.
The article was proposed by the Planning Board to provide clarification about the rules concerning parking requirements. You can see the red line proposed changes, and the clarifications are minor, but make the requirements much clearer for the applicants. The Select Board voted unanimously to support this article.
Thank you. The Advisory Committee's recommendation. Mr. DeCosmo.
The Advisory Committee voted 8-0 to recommend the amendment. Once again, it's similar to the last article. It's an administrative change designed to provide clarity on interpretational aspects of the bylaw.
Thank you. And again, we have to hear from the Planning Board on its recommendation after a hearing.
Article 17, amend zoning bylaw section 760, parking requirements. The Planning Board hereby reports that in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, a public hearing was held on this article on December 8, 2022, and closed on the same night. On February 9, 2023, the board voted unanimously to support passage of the article at the April 10, 2023 annual town meeting. The changes to this article allow for clarifications to the existing parking bylaw. A clarification is proposed for street screening and parking reduction methods. The employee requirement has been removed for off-site parking reduction methods so that more opportunities may be available for off-site parking if requirements are met. Outdoor seating cafes parking has been added to be under the discretion of the Planning Board from being exempt for circumstances which additional parking may be needed. The Planning Board supports this article.
Thank you. Are there any questions or discussion on Article 17? Yes, sir, the gentleman on my left.
Yeah, hi, William Schmid, 33 Egypt Beach Road. Are we voting on just the red corrections here, or are we voting on new material in the article?
The red corrections.
Okay, so that all the other stuff is pre-existing and not changing?
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Bob. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you. Any further discussion on Article 17, the amendments to the parking requirements in the zoning bylaw? Hearing none. Ask for a vote. This requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Hearing none, that's a unanimous vote. That's the last article. I declare the meeting dissolved at 9 o'clock. Thank you.